You're listening to the Uplevel Your Online Business Show, where wealth is empowering, purpose is crucial, and high vibes are non-negotiable. And now, here's your host, certified business coach and practical woo strategist, Sara J Loureiro.
Welcome to another episode of the Uplevel Your Online Business Show with me, Sarah. And I wanted to record a few more vulnerable episodes for you guys, just so that we can have more like raw and real conversations, as always. And I just kind of wanted to do this episode specifically about bad business investments, just because I feel like this is so common. And I think that people really have high expectations for all of our business investments and all of the investments that we make throughout our entire lives, but also two, feel a lot of shame within investments when they don't work out. And I just wanted to let you know that this is totally normal and it's not your fault. And a lot of the times it's also not the investment's fault either. I'm going to talk specifically about a few investments that I made that were not the greatest, but why, I still believe that I was delivered what exactly I asked for, and it just wasn't the right experience for me. So one of the reasons why I wanted to have this episode is because I remember one time listening to a really, really great entrepreneur. His name is Chris Harder. And I remember an episode that he did of his podcast about how every single year he probably drains around 6 figures in bad investments. And so that could be investments in mentorship. It could be investments in ads. It can be investments in PR. It doesn't really matter what it is. He just kind of normalized at this point that that is something that happens and there's no good or bad about it. And I've actually started to normalize that myself. And I absolutely love coming from this place of like, okay, that wasn't the one that was going to do the thing that I really wanted it to do. Like that ad person or that mentor or that social media manager. And I just keep going. I keep going. I thank them for their work because I never hire bad people. I know that for a fact. And I continue on. And then I find the right thing that does work. And I feel like that's exactly how I was able to get a business to, multiple 7 figures in terms of its brand identity. And I'm really grateful for that. And I'm really grateful for normalizing things without like necessarily victimizing myself or saying like, oh, like that person or that specific program was the worst program ever. Like I need to go after that person. Instead, in all honesty, I thank the person, I thank the program, and I move on. But I wanted to, share with you guys the uglies of past investments and what I've learned from all of them. And I'm going to start right at the beginning. I'm going to start in and around 2015, 2016, because that's when I first started my business. And I'm going to see how many of these I can actually remember so that if you're kind of piling up your failures, you can start to pile up your failures against my failures. And you can probably be like, oh my God, she has so many more failures than me. And that's the entire point, because the more failures I have, the more successes I have. And the same is true for you, right? So let's go ahead and get started. So 2015, 2016, I started out in my online business and I made a few investments in coaches. One of the very first ones that I made was for a branding group coaching program, and I loved it. I think it was such a great investment for where I was in my business. I loved the coach that was mentoring me. I literally made like lifelong friends inside of that program. And, it was very, very, very beginner. And so I didn't necessarily get a lot of results from it in terms of monetary results, but a lot of the work that I did inside that program kind of laid the foundations for everywhere that I am in my business today. So very grateful for it. And hired my first business coach, taught me about money mindset. That was amazing. I hired a second business coach. This one was, I think, like 4 times as much money. Once again, amazing. That woman I hired while I was pregnant. She helped me with my entire business plan while I was pregnant and how to transition out of that business plan. Some of the stuff that she taught me about team is stuff that I use to this very day. Now, I will say as well that like not everything that she taught me was perfect. So she helped me with the launch plan, and my launches failed. They totally failed. I could have blamed her, but I'm, once again, not in victim mentality. So I actually really, really enjoyed the experience, and I gave her a lot of grace for a lot of the stuff that wasn't necessarily her responsibility or my responsibility that didn't work out. But I can definitely say that that was a really amazing, solid investment. And I think in and around that time, I hired just a money mindset coach. I think I hired her for about 1 month. It was a really great experience. What I think I learned from that experience as well is that only mindset type programs really aren't my thing. And so that's when I kind of realized that, maybe that wasn't something that I would continue with necessarily. And then let's get into some of the uglies. So I can't remember when it was. I want to say it was around 2020. I hired a coach, and she's very, very well known right now. And I just remember her having this like really great flash sale. She was doing this VIP intensive. I was really excited about it because she had made over 500K in her business. And so I really wanted to learn from her. And I remember the whole package included, I think it was like 2 months to her membership site. It was a 90-minute intensive with her. It was Voxer support in between. So I was like, great. Yeah, let's do this. So I paid for it. I got access to this membership site, and the membership site, like my password didn't even work for my membership site. I remember that. And I get into this membership site, and it's just, none of it makes sense. None of it was organized. It wasn't clear at all. And it was just a whole bunch of old videos, that were really, really bad quality, from like years prior. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, this is not the vibe that I wanted here. And then I scheduled a call with her assistant, and I, on the day of, I was like, I still haven't really received any information about this call. So I sent her an email. I didn't have like an email confirmation about it. I didn't have a Zoom link. I had no idea where this call was going to take place. And literally like a minute before the call, maybe not even a minute before, I feel like on the dot of when the call was supposed to happen, I still didn't know when it was happening. I still didn't know what happened to this woman. I received a friend request on Facebook, and I saw it that it was her. And so I added her, and then she just called me on a Facebook audio, and I could tell she was in her car. And that immediately to me also turned me off, because I was just like, well, I paid a lot of money for this call. It just feels like she just had it haphazardly. She didn't really care about it. She was in her car. She, messaged me, or she added me as a friend like a minute before the call. Wasn't very impressed with it. The whole call in and of itself, I also was not very impressed with. I had been coached before, like I said, with a variety of different people, and I just left that experience pretty disappointed with it. But I also learned a lot from it. I learned that I don't want to be that person. I'm not going to have, my trainings are all going to make sense. They're all going to be neat and organized. They're all going to be quality. They're all going to have a process and a flow. And I also realized for myself that I'm never going to take on a coaching call from a car. That's just not what someone's going to get from me. If someone gets a coaching call from me, they're going to get detailed notes from the call. They're going to get the call where I am in a quiet place where I can actually focus and concentrate on them. And they're going to get the Zoom link. They're going to get the scheduling link. They're going to get all of that prior, because I want to make sure that my clients feel like they have a very supportive experience. And so those were really, really great things that I learned. And I think one of the most profound things that I've learned from really bad business experiences is usually I just kind of look at that person and I'm like, well, if that person can have that shitty of a package and that shitty of a coaching experience, imagine what I can have. Imagine what I can do with my coaching experiences if that is what some people feel like, could be a high caliber, which I consider the bare minimum, and they still make money. So what does that say? It says a lot about their marketing and how powerful their marketing truly is. And so that's another thing that I paid a lot of attention to from that specific experience. I had a few other experiences that year where I actually paid for a combination of done-for-you service work and coaching. And it's interesting because I paid 2 different companies in 2020 for this type of mentorship. So it was a little bit of their team helping me get leads plus them doing mentorship for me. And one of the companies was just so neat, organized, had really great flows, seemed very, very genuine with everything they're doing. And the other company that I worked for or with still seemed very genuine, but you can tell that that specific mentor had a lot of problems with her team. And so from that, I started to realize that team and team communication and team flow is also really important. So a bit of like ups and downs from there. Then I invested in, I think it was to this date, I think it was still the most expensive coaching that I have ever purchased. It was almost $20,000 for 3 months of coaching. And I remember doing it because I was at the end of my biggest year in business. And I remember saying to myself, I just want to go bigger. And I really want to learn from someone who has the type of lifestyle that I want. And so I made this investment. She was very, very sweet. I really liked her as a person. But what I realized from that investment was that her coaching didn't necessarily add up to what I believe I invested into it. And so while I learned a lot from it, I definitely wouldn't say that that was the type of investment that pushed the needle or pushed the envelope forward, so to speak. And I left it being grateful of the experience. But at the same time, I was like, nah, I probably could have spent that money on something else that would have been more worthwhile. And because of that experience, I actually spent, I think, 1.5 years without a coach after that because I just wanted to do things on my own for a little bit. I was kind of burnt out from investing in so many programs. And I feel like a lot of you are very similar from what I hear and understand. And I, once again, had no ill will for her. I actually gave her a really great testimonial because I did do a really great launch inside of her program. But still, I just kind of wanted to take a break. And it wasn't until like 1.5 years later where one of my friends had invested in a like longer term mastermind with these 2 mentors. And I had thought about working with them for a while. I was kind of like wondering whether or not I should do it. And then I was kind of at this like standstill in my business where my business had hit a plateau and my income was actually decreasing. And at that point in time, I was like, you know what? I actually need to do this because I've seen a lot of people who get on sales calls with me where they don't take the leap and they wait around. And then a few months later, they come back to me and they're like, oh my God, I should have just worked with you at that specific point in time. I'm like shooting myself in the foot because, now I'm in an even worse situation because now I tried it on my own for a few more months and like none of this works or none of it is working. And, some of them end up investing in me and being like, oh my God, I wish I invested in you, 3 months ago, 6 months ago. And then others unfortunately say, I just burnt through all of my savings. Now I have to go back to a 9-to-5. I should have just signed up with you when I had the chance back then. And I knew from having all of those experiences and having all of those conversations with women that I was never going to be one of those women. And so I looked at everything that was going on for me and I was like, we either go big or go home. I just need to trust in the fact that this is going to work out despite, this previous bad investment. And I took the leap of faith. And that was actually one of the best investments in my business that I have ever made. And so that was an investment that happened after feeling really burnt out from coaching programs. And I doubled my income within, I think, 2 or 3 months of working with them. And then that was really the thing that shifted me from like 20K a month to 80K a month in a year. And I remember that entire experience and how grateful I was for it. And I remember specifically why it worked so well. It worked really well because I had actual time with the founders. I was on calls with the founders versus other coaching programs. I didn't have any, I didn't even see the founders inside of the programs, which to me, I think is very problematic when you're a little bit more of an advanced, business owner and you need more advanced advice. So that was a really great investment. So that kind of brought me up. It made me feel highly motivated again. I had a few investments here and there with like people who were working on my team who didn't really do really well. Some people where I really lost a lot of money with, sometimes $20,000, sometimes $10,000. I remember one time I invested in an ad company with a lovely, lovely woman. And I think it was like $5,000 for a 3-month, ad monitoring package. And she also spent, I think, $5,000 or $10,000 on it. And I literally just got one client from it. And the ads that I did for myself before hiring her were like 5 times more profitable. And that was when another thing where I realized I'd rather learn ads on my own and understand ads and have my team help me with my ads my way than hire other people who like truly don't understand my business and who are just kind of, especially with agencies, I find that you're just really treated like a number. And so that was another lesson that I learned from that specific experience. And that's why anytime that anyone, is thinking about working with me and is telling me that they're thinking about going with an agency to just do ads for them, I always tell them, please don't do that to yourself. I've never heard of anyone, especially anyone who's like under multiple 6 figures a year, who's hired an ad agency where it actually worked out in their favor. And I think that that's, too crappy of a statistic, unfortunately, but I think that that's the reality of our industry and like where we currently are in the online market. And I think one of the most empowering things that you can do is learn ads yourself, truly. And manage them yourself until you're ready to hand them off to someone else until, like $2,000 a month is not a lot for you to be able to handle or to be able to hand off like all of the ad work that goes into setting up and running ads. So it's another really great tidbit for you. But let's go into a little bit more recent. I finished the program that was really, really great for me. I think it was back in the winter of 2023. And then in 2024, I was really excited about doing this brand new program. And one of my friends had recommended it to me. And it was going to be another year-long program. And I was just super excited about it. And I got into this program. Luckily, I just paid for 2 months of the program. And it was just nothing like I thought it was going to be. It was very disorganized. The help, the support, was not something that I actually really enjoyed. And I really didn't like the mentor that I was signed up with. I found him to be really condescending with me and just didn't really appreciate that vibe at all. And I ended up getting out of that program because I was not happy in it. And they did have like a 2-month take it or leave it time period. So I left that one. And then I ended up joining another one where I paid, I think, like $15,000 for another program that also really didn't really meet up to its expectations. And I learned a lot, once again, from that program. But what I also learned is that I teach the exact same things that they were teaching inside of that program, but I was charging 1/3 of what this coach was charging. And it really opened up my eyes to how a lot of what goes on in the online coaching space is really just a process of becoming and owning what you value yourself at and what you feel like you're worth, which is just so interesting because I looked at that program and I looked at how much I invested in it and I looked at what I got from it and I looked at my program where I'm actually more involved with my clients and I give my clients lifetime access and I didn't even get lifetime access to this program that I paid for $15,000 for 3 months for. And that's when I was like, wow, my clients are actually getting a deal. They're getting such a deal with working with me, with working with my team. And it actually made me feel a lot prouder of what it is that I had created. And it made me confident in the fact that I was providing something that was of really phenomenal value. And it helped me raise my prices for my program. And although I didn't get the results necessarily that I wanted from that specific investment, I learned a few new things. I learned a few new funnels. And I really, truly, I think that last investment gave me the confidence that I needed to understand that I knew a lot more than I thought I did about online business and scalability. And so that investment was more of like a blessing in disguise. And so, yes, it was money that I could have invested somewhere else, but those lessons that I learned from that investment were just so much greater than anything that I could have done on my own. So that's most of them, I think. I'm trying to think in my head to see if there's any others that I can share with you that were not the greatest. I also, yes, this is another one. I also invested in an ads manager last year. Quite a hefty price tag on the ads manager. I didn't find that any of the ads that we created together or the ads that he suggested to me actually produced a really great ROI. So I ended up letting that go. However, he was a phenomenal human being and he was really, really smart. And I think that had I just taken on more of the creative direction and had I taken on more control of everything that was being done, I actually think we would have gotten better results. And so I will, and I do keep him in mind for my business for the future because I actually really did enjoy working with him. And so although the investment didn't go the way I wanted it to, and you could consider that like lost investment money, once again, I learned something, actually found that one thing that we did together ended up being extremely profitable. And I would definitely recommend him and I would probably hire him in the future. So that is how I reframe bad investments for myself, or quote unquote bad, because I don't really necessarily think any of them were bad. And I really have gotten to a place where I am very picky and choosy about my investments, as you should be. But at the same time, I also trust in myself to make it back. And I trust in myself to make the best decisions. And I also trust in myself that when I'm going to get on a call with someone, that I'm not just wasting my time or wasting their time. I know what I'm worth and I know what it is that I want. And I'm going to invest at the level of the person who I want to become. And that's what I do. And in all honesty, I probably invest a lot less than most other people who are earning what I earn. And I think it's just because I am more selective with who I work with. I don't work with high ticket coaches who have like $50,000 programs. I still don't believe that our industry is at that level unless you are truly making just a lot more income than the average human. And yeah, that's kind of how my investments have gone. And so 10 years of investments, I've definitely lost over 6 figures in bad investments throughout all this time. However, because I'm also not at the level of someone like Chris Harder, which I spoke about in the beginning of this episode, I'm also not at the point where I, have 6 figures of bad investments every single year because I also have not earned that much. And so I'm sure that when I start earning, over 7 figures a year, over multiple 7 figures a year, which I think is what they're currently earning, him and his partner, I'm sure that at that point in time, the investment losses are going to go up as well. And if you look at business as an investment, as any other investment that you have in your life. The stock market can crash right after you make your biggest investment in the stock market. You could buy a home and it could be a bad investment and 5 years later, you're going to have to sell it, or less than 5 years later, you're going to have to sell it and you might lose money on that investment. This is why these are investments. They're risky, right? You could lose money anywhere, but that's the thing. And that's the whole point of an investment is you have to keep on investing. You're not just going to let the stock market crash and then never invest in stocks again because you got burned once. You're going to get back into the game. You're going to say, okay, well, that was, that specific experience. That's not going to happen to me again. I'm going to go back in. I'm going to invest again. And really the most successful people just understand that. They just normalize that and they understand that money is just money and money is always going to come back to you. And, I hope that for yourself, if you're listening to this, that you start to adopt that type of mindset, because when you do, you can literally just be unstoppable and nothing really bothers you anymore, because you've developed this resilience that you have in yourself, to understand that, everything's going to come back to you and everything's going to be a really, really great learning experience. And you can trust yourself enough that you're always going to be making the best decisions that you can at that specific point in time. So let me know how you liked this episode. I would love to hear from you. You can always reach me on my Instagram. It's at Sara without an H, J Loureiro. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Uplevel Your Online Business Show. If you enjoy our show and would like the show notes and free goodies about how to grow your online coaching business, head over to sarajloureiro.com for more information. We hope you'll tune in next time.